I now recognize Representative Ami Bera of California, who's the chair of the Subcommittee on Asia and the Pacific, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll watch the clock. You know, I'm going to focus on other parts of the Indo-Pacific, but by no means is that to express that, you know, I don't wake up every morning, with sadness about the tragedy that we're seeing take place in Ukraine and with concern of the lessons that China and others may take out of this, or, you know, the concerns over the security of the people of Taiwan. But a lot happening in the region, and Madam Deputy Secretary, we've had a chance to talk about what's unfolding in Myanmar, and, you know, I try to look for a path forward and, you know, how we can get to a ceasefire, and I just don't see a clear direction. If you could give us an update on what you're seeing there. It seems like the junta is really digging in, as well as the resistance, and I've talked to ambassadors in the region and others, and appreciate ASEAN's leadership here, but, you know, what would you like to see out of Congress, and, you know, what can we do working with our ASEAN colleagues?
Horrifying tragedy. Indeed, Secretary Blinken recently, looking back all the way to 2017, named what has happened to the Rohingya in Burma as genocide. So we did that because we believe that accountability of the past is critical for accountability for the present. And shining a light on the crimes of Burma's military in the past also speaks to what they are doing in the present. The work with ASEAN and the travels that you all have made to countries in Southeast Asia who are part of ASEAN to urge them to follow through on the 5-point consensus in a way that is real and inclusive. There have been forays to the capital, but often to meet with junta leadership, not to meet with democratic opposition. And so I would urge you to continue to press countries in ASEAN to move forward in a very pressing kind of way. Cambodia is the current chair. They have mixed ambitions here, and they need to be encouraged, to say the least, by other members of ASEAN to take the action that is necessary. Both myself and Counselor Derek Chalet have tried to put a special focus on this. Derek has traveled maybe 3 times to the region. I have gone twice myself, because we want to make sure that this does not last forever and that the world does not forget what is happening here.
Let me touch on another subject that doesn't get as much coverage, but is no less important. You touched on in your open, you know, the second island chain, the Pacific Islands, and, you know, the importance of getting COFA completed. I'm glad to hear that there'll be a special envoy focused on this. If you could give us an update, and then obviously we're watching the Solomon Islands very closely, and again, you know, the South China Sea is much more complicated today than maybe had we resolved some of this back in 2014, but, you know, we don't want to see that happen in the Pacific Ocean. If you could give us an update on COFA.
Right. The Pacific Islands are incredibly important. The Secretary, even after the start of Putin's premeditated, unjust, and unprovoked invasion of Ukraine, went to Australia and to Fiji, and went to Fiji for a meeting of Pacific Island nations. All of these islands are under tremendous stress, not only economically and in terms of COVID, but they are barely above sea level. And so when we look at the climate crisis, these islands are quite at risk. We were very glad to just name as a special presidential envoy a very seasoned Foreign Service officer, Ambassador Yun, Joe Yun, to be the special presidential envoy for the COFA negotiations. He will go forward. It's not that the folks who were doing this before weren't capable. They were, but we felt that we needed to raise the level of attention and our concern about this. In addition, we have an Our Ocean conference coming up just in a few days to focus, co-hosted by the United States and Palau, to bring attention to these global issues. Mindful I have 5 seconds left. Let me say on the Solomon Islands that we are very concerned about the relationship with the PRC. We will be taking some action shortly to remind the Solomon Islands of how important their
The gentleman's time has
relationship with us are.
expired.